A Tale of Two Skulls, the long heads of Eli Springs and Dali, and what they reveal about humanity's evolution in the Middle Pleistocene. What if two ancient skulls, separated by more than 7,000 kilometers and thousands of miles of ecological diversity, told a similar story about the evolution of the human species? What if their similarities weren't coincidence, but a key to understanding the deep migrations, environmental pressures, and evolutionary paths that once shaped early humans during one of the most turbulent periods in Earth's climate history? This is the strange and compelling mystery posed by the Eli Springs skull from northern Kenya and the Dali skull from central China. Both skulls, dated to roughly 250,000 to 300,000 years ago, stand out in the fossil record for their extremely long and low cranial shapes. At a glance, they could almost be from the same species or even the same population, if one were not found in East Africa and the other in the heartland of Ice Age Asia. Their unexpected morphological similarity forces us to ask unsettling and profound questions. Were these long-skulled humans evolving under the same selective pressures? Did they inherit this cranial form from a common ancestor who ranged widely across the old world? Or are we witnessing convergent evolution driven by shared environments and behaviors in different regions? In this comparative exploration, we will examine these two skulls side by side, their morphology, their geological and environmental context, and their implications for the evolution of Homo sapiens and other archaic human groups. We will trace the climate of the Mid-Pleistocene, investigate the rich but fragile ecosystems of central China and eastern Africa during this period, and explore the possibility that the long-skulled humans of Eli Springs and Dali were shaped by similar challenges, despite their distant homes. The Eli Springs skull was discovered in the early 1970s on the western shore of Lake Turkana, near the village of Eli Springs in northern Kenya. It was immediately recognized as an enigmatic find, a complete human cranium, clearly archaic in form, yet not easily classified into known species like Homo erectus, Homo heidelbergensis, or early Homo sapiens. Its most striking feature was its extreme elongation. From glabellar to occipital torus, the skull is unusually long, with a flattened forehead and a very low cranial vault. Yet its brain case is fairly large, approaching 1,300 cubic centimeters, and it lacks the thick brow ridges and sharply angled occipital bone typical of African Homo erectus. Thousands of miles away, the Dali skull was unearthed in Shanxi Province, China, in 1978 during mining operations. Like the Eli Springs cranium, the Dali skull, dated to about 260,000 years ago, defied easy classification. It was long and low, but with a large brain volume, around 1,120 cc. It had heavy brow ridges and a robust face, but also more modern-like features in the midface and cranial base. Chinese paleoanthropologists have long emphasized its transitional nature, often linking it to an indigenous evolutionary line leading to modern East Asians. What is remarkable is that both skulls have often been described using the same words, long and low. Their cranial shapes are dolichocephalic to an extreme, yet with modern-like brain sizes and some derived features. Could it be that these two individuals, perhaps separated by tens of thousands of years and continents, were walking along parallel evolutionary tracks? To understand how unusual these two skulls are, we must look at their cephalic indexes, the ratio of skull width to length. A lower index indicates a longer, narrower skull. The Eli Springs skull has an index closer to 70, placing it firmly in the dolichocephalic range. The Dali skull has a similar index, suggesting that both individuals shared not just brain size, but cranial form. This long shape is unlike that of modern humans, who tend to have more rounded or globular skulls, especially from around 100,000 years ago onward. It also differs from the short, wide skulls seen in some Neanderthals. Instead, this form echoes the Homo erectus lineage, but with notable modifications. In both Dali and Eli Springs, the vault is expanded, the frontal bone is broader, and the occipital region less sharply angled. These skulls are transitional, not quite modern, but not fully primitive either. Some researchers have suggested that such long skulls might represent a regional population adapting to open, dry environments, possibly favoring increased brain cooling or particular biomechanical needs. Others argue the shape may be a retained ancestral trait. Yet the convergence between Dali and Eli Springs, separated by more than a continent, suggests something more than local tradition. The Mid-Pleistocene was no gentle age. Around 250,000 to 300,000 years ago, Earth was transitioning from one glacial cycle to the next. The period is generally associated with marine isotope stage 8, a cold and dry glacial period that reached its peak around 280,000 years ago, followed by the warmer marine isotope stage 7 interglacial. These shifts would have dramatically reshaped landscapes, altering rainfall patterns, vegetation zones, and the distribution of prey animals. In East Africa, Lake Turkana, near Eli Springs, was a fluctuating and unstable environment. At times, the lake expanded dramatically, flooding wide plains and creating lush shorelines rich in fish and megafauna. At other times, the lake shrank to salty puddles surrounded by dry desert. Hominins living in this region would have needed to be mobile, adaptable, and cognitively flexible to survive the climate roller coaster. Central China's Dali region would have also felt the effects of these Pleistocene rhythms. Lowest soils deposited by wind blanketed the highlands, while river valleys offered refuge during cold, dry glacial phases. The area is known for its alternating cycles of loess, dry, and paleosol, wet deposits, mirroring the boom and bust pattern of African lakes. Early humans in Dali likely moved seasonally, exploiting river corridors, sheltering in caves, and hunting large grazing animals that ranged across the steppe-like grasslands. In both regions, humans faced large seasonal variations, including dry glacial winters and brief fertile interglacial summers. Such instability may have favored generalists, tool users, opportunistic omnivores, and highly social creatures. Could these similar pressures have shaped similar anatomy? The Eli Springs and Dali skulls present us with a riddle. Are they cousins, shaped by shared ancestry, or strangers moulded into similar forms by the same environmental forge? One possibility is that both fossils represent late surviving branches of Homo erectus, moving independently toward more modern morphology. Another view sees them as early members of Homo sapiens, or Homo heidelbergensis, not fully modern, but well on the way, retaining archaic traits even as their brains expanded and faces began to change. Some Chinese researchers argue that Dali fits into a unique evolutionary pathway, perhaps even an early Asian Homo sapiens, while others place it closer to Homo heidelbergensis. The same ambiguity surrounds Eli Springs. Though it's from Africa, it doesn't neatly match other early African sapiens fossils like Omo or Herto. Instead, its low, long shape seems more aligned with archaic types, though it lacks the thick brow and heavy musculature of classic erectus. Yet there is one more tantalizing clue. Genetic studies have shown that Homo sapiens emerged not from a single population, but from a network of semi-isolated groups across Africa and possibly beyond. Some of these groups may have looked like Eli Springs, long-headed, robust, transitional. Others may have looked more like early modern humans from southern Africa or the Levant. Could the Eli Springs skull represent one branch of this complex family tree? As for Dali, some scholars suggest that it might be connected to the mysterious Denisovans, an archaic population known only from fragmentary fossils and DNA. If Dali was part of a long-headed, big-brained Denisovan lineage, it would explain both its unique morphology and its Asian context. In this scenario, both Dali and Eli Springs might represent distant cousins, descended from Homo heidelbergensis populations that spread from Africa into Asia between 700,000 and 500,000 years ago. Over time, these populations evolved independently, but retained similar traits because of shared ancestry and similar environments. The similarities between the Eli Springs and Dali skulls remind us that human evolution was not a linear march from primitive to modern. It was a messy, branching process, full of reversals, isolated populations, and parallel experiments in anatomy and behavior. These long-skulled individuals challenged the tidy boundaries we like to draw between species. They were big-brained, likely capable of complex behaviors, and lived in dynamic environments that tested their endurance and intelligence. They hunted, gathered, migrated, and perhaps even spoke rudimentary language. Their faces were heavy, but human-like. Their skulls were long, but not ape-like. Perhaps most importantly, they show us that similar problems can lead to similar solutions, even across continents. The Ice Age world was a harsh teacher, and it may have sculpted these humans into the same anatomical mold, just as rivers carve the same curves into distant canyons. In the end, the Dali and Eli Springs skulls stand as monuments to a forgotten chapter of our ancestry, a time when the human story was not confined to one species or one continent, but played out across the globe in a million different ways. They hint at the deep connectedness of our evolutionary journey and the mystery that still clings to the long, low heads of our ancient cousins. Are we looking at early Homo sapiens, ghosts of Homo heidelbergensis, or something entirely different, an evolutionary echo of a time when the world was colder, drier, and far less certain? Whatever the answer, the story is far from over. New discoveries from deep caves in China to the shifting sands of Lake Turkana may soon shed more light on these strange skulls. And when they do, the long, low heads of Dali and Eli Springs will still be waiting, silent witnesses to a time when the human mind was being forged under pressure, shaped by wind, water, and fire. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and help the channel get to 100,000 subscribers.